Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. It's a big audience. I was presenting in Mallorca, Spain 2 weeks ago. There was only, they have quite a smaller user group. I think it was 8 people that showed up. It's a bit more here, but the weather was nicer over there. So it's a bit of still nice to be here. I've been here before, as I mentioned, talking about a very different topic than today. Today I'll be talking about Power BI embedded or embedded analytics in general, what it is and how it works, and hopefully give you a bit of an idea. But before we start, I want to get to know you a bit better. So please raise your hands if you can answer any of the following questions with yes. And we start easy. Who has heard of Power BI before? Should be 99%, I guess. And keep your hands up until you don't answer with yes anymore. So who knows how Power BI works generally? Huh? Still most people. And who feels they could actually now build a Power BI solution, a Power BI report? Doesn't need to be the most sophisticated one, but a few hands went down, but still not too many. Now let me ask you the same questions, but I added one little word into those questions. So who has heard of Power BI embedded before? Still a few, and I think now slowly, my hand is also still up. Huh? Now I think slowly hands will start to go down. Who knows how Power BI embedded works? Hands are going halfway now, yeah, exactly. And the last one, let's see, who feels they could build a Power BI embedded solution? My hand is going down here as well. So that gives you a bit of an indication maybe what that really means. So, okay, so now I know what I'm dealing with. Let me tell you briefly about myself. My name is Pascal, based in Switzerland, been working with data and BI for a long time. This 10 plus years, it's nice because you can just leave it on the slides, and even if it's 25 years. And I'm the co-founder of Embetsy, a company also based in Switzerland, where we do everything Power BI embedded. So we have our out-of-the-box solution, but we also consult and help people with embedded because it's quite a steep learning curve and there's not that much material out there. So yeah, but enough about me. Let's dig in. Another question to the group here. So who is using embedded analytics? Doesn't need to be Power BI embedded, but generally embedded analytics as a user, as a viewer. So who is consuming embedded analytics? Nobody. Half one is not sure. Huh? I think all of you are. Because all of you can answer one of these questions with yes. And that means it's likely that you're using embedded analytics. So 3 screenshots from my phone from 3 different apps, and they all use embedded analytics in one way or another. So on the left-hand side here, we have my banking app, where I see stock prices, so analytics, but I can also take action. I can buy or sell stocks. Analytics embedded inside an app. Is it Power BI embedded? We don't know. It's not, but generally we don't need to know. Same with LinkedIn here, where we have analytics of our posts, how many people click and like and comment, embedded into the app. So I think we're all using embedded analytics as viewers, just don't really realize maybe up until now. Let's look at Power BI embedded a bit more specifically. Why would I even want to use embedded instead of just regular Power BI? Well, with embedded, you can have a fully branded solution. You can have your logo and your corporate colors and white label it, if you so will. You can do more than just Power BI, meaning you're not restricted to showing Power BI reports, because technically embedded is any piece of software or app, and you can add other functionality that don't have anything to do with Power BI. Or you could embed other BI tools as well and have Power BI and Tableau embedded into one app, just giving you ideas. It's also much easier to give access to external people that don't even have a Microsoft account. So you can give access to, I could give access to my mom's Gmail account if I want to. Microsoft doesn't need to know about it. Because also me as a developer, I decide how people log into that solution. It can be using Microsoft Entra with MFA. It can be just username, password. We can have a platform that doesn't need any login at all. We can use Google logins or Facebook logins. Anything is possible. And there's also potential for cost savings. Because if you use Power BI embedded, viewers of reports, they don't need to have a Power BI Pro license. And I'll talk about licensing a bit more. I think I'll mention this 2 or 3 times, but basically embedded works on any fabric capacity, even an F2. And there could be more reasons depending on what that app or that embedded solution you want to build has to do. So we're not only talking about embedding Power BI somewhere, we're really talking about building a whole solution with a look and feel, with a navigation, with buttons, with logic, with logos and colors. The embedding of Power BI can be a tiny little bit of an embedded solution. We're basically building a software. So what I've prepared is a branded portal just for today, and feel free to scan that QR code. It will take you to a Power BI embedded solution. The credentials are already in, so basically just click on the green button and you should be connected. And I'll do the same here once all the phones are down. To show you what it could look like. Doesn't necessarily need to look like this at all, but just one way of what we could do. I think that's a bit of the demo effect, but it should load soon. What you can already tell is that we're not logging into app.powerbi.com. So we're logging into manchester.embetsy.io. And this is nicely branded. We have like the logo of the user group. We have the hashtag here, and then I can just log in here, and then I should already see my first embedded Power BI report. The login worked for you guys? No? Yes? Still loading. Maybe it's because we're all on the Wi-Fi. Is everybody using the guest Wi-Fi? Let's see. I think the most important part is because it also it's optimized. This particular solution is optimized for desktop, so it looks nicer here anyway. But let's get this to run. Good. Slowly loading. So we can see already again branded. So we don't really see that this is Power BI. And here we go. Just slow. So while we wait, I'll just talk you through what we see or what we will see. So we have a Power BI report here. We can also embed paginated reports. We can embed dashboards. You can embed single visuals if you want to. And then now that we finally got the report, the interaction with the report is exactly the same. So we can use slicers, we can cross-filter between visuals, we have the page navigation. We decided to not use the standard one, but like create our own. So I navigate between the pages, and then again I have a paginated report where also the navigation is exactly the same that you would have in the regular Power BI service. But we're not restricted to this. So for example, let's give this a second. Paginated report. I also have like a whole website embedded because it's web development. Anything that you can see on any website, technically, we could include here. It's just a bit of code. We have hyperlinks, and then we also have a button that sends out an email. That's exactly the same things that you can see. We have a bit of a menu up here, but not too many options. So, for example, what we're missing here is a backend where I can define what reports should be shown and who should have access. And we don't see this because now I'm logged in, or we're all logged in as a regular user. But let me log out again. And this time I log in using, because I was already logged in, didn't see MFA, but I now logged in with Entra. And you see I have a different menu. I don't have the paginated report, for example. I don't have the hyperlinks, but in turn, I have a lot more options here. So I'm now in the admin section. And again, this can look very different depending on what solution you're building with embedded. This is just how we said that's the functionality we want to have. So what we can do here, for example, is we define different roles. You guys are using this role. So this is where I defined what elements, what objects, what reports you can see. Then we have what we call pages. This is where I would add reports, for example. So I can say I want to add a Power BI report. When I click on the workspace drop down, I get all the workspaces, regular Power BI workspaces, where the user used to log into the portal has access to. And then I get a list of reports that I can embed. And again, doesn't need to be like that. One thing I want to mention is that row level security, both types of row level security, so static one and dynamic row level security, works perfectly fine in embedded. So you can really build a solution at scale that's perfectly secure. And everybody only sees the data they're supposed to see. Quick note about capacities, because we all like to talk about capacities. Currently, this is running on a Fabric trial, but it can work on any Fabric capacity and any, of course, Power BI embedded capacity. And also the nice thing here, talking about cost savings again, we always have the two billing models from Microsoft, pay as you go or reserved. And when you decide to go for pay as you go, you only pay for the time your capacity was running. And because we're logging into a web application, we basically know if somebody's using it. So we can put the capacity to sleep whenever nobody is looking at reports. And as soon as the first person logs into the portal, we start the capacity. It takes a few seconds. And people mostly don't even notice it. And then they look at the reports. When they log out or they're inactive in the browser for a couple of minutes, they logged out and the capacity goes back to sleep. And using this in most cases can be quite a lot cheaper than using reserved. With reserved, you get 41% discount from Microsoft. But if you think about it, nobody's looking at your reports at night, during weekends, depending on how many time zones you're in. That reduces it by more than the 41. Anyway, this is what it could look like. But we still don't know how it works. So I want to go back to the slides and show you what Power BI embedded, what is not Power BI embedded, because I think that's also important. Some of you might know these functionalities here. So in the Power BI service, you can embed reports and you can say website or portal or publish to web. Then you get different hyperlinks, and that has nothing to do with Power BI embedded. The publish to web means completely public link. Anybody with this link, so if you use publish to web, anybody with this URL can log in and see your data. If you use website or portal, then you get a secure link, but people using it still need to log in using their Microsoft account, which also means they need a Power BI Pro license, a premium per user, or it needs to be an F64 or higher. That's not what we're talking about at all. But I know there's a bit of confusion around what embedded is and how to log in, and so this is not what we're talking about. We're not logging. None of you has now logged into Microsoft. The app logs into Microsoft. And these solutions here is where the user logs in, or with the public, then basically nobody logs in. Publish to web, definitely not secure. Website or portal, secure, but needs licensing. So how does it work? 3 screenshots here, and some of these screenshots you've seen before, maybe. So we have the workspace settings. And here, this is just to show that we can really use any kind of a capacity. Trial, embedded, fabric, premium, if you still have an active premium, but not for long anyway. And then we have one technical user, a service principal. And that user must be at least a member on the workspace, because this is the user that communicates with the Power BI service. That's the only user, even if you have hundreds of thousands of users in your embedded, only one user is technically assigned to the workspace, at least one user. And then there's a couple of admin settings that you need to enable to generally allow embedding in your tenant. After those 3 things are done, we can get started. Still don't know how, but this is technically what we need. And this is showing how Power BI Embedded works. On the left-hand side, we have report creation, accessing data sources, running through Power Query, creating a semantic model, designing a report, creating row-level security roles. Everything is exactly the same. So from the Power BI point of view, no difference at all. You still publish to the Power BI service. That's where we need the settings I showed before. And then over here, that's where the magic happens. And basically it happens here. The Power BI REST API. Power BI REST API is the little thing that communicates between my app and Power BI. That's what is logging in. That's what giving us the security access tokens. That's what then gives back the iframe with the report or the paginated report. So that's really where the magic happens. And there is hundreds of API calls. The difficult part is really to know when to call which API to make it work and to have a nice user experience. But that's really where things are happening. So now we say, cool, I want to do this. What do I need to learn? What skills do I need? If I'm a regular Power BI person, like me, basically, that doesn't help you much. Skills needed for embedded are something with front-end web development. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, similar things like that. You definitely need a bit of backend. Node.js, our app, for example, is Node.js. Doesn't have to be Node.js, could be anything. You probably need a bit of SQL as well, because most likely in your backend you have the assigning of roles to users and that sort of thing. You need to save that somewhere and securely load it again. So a bit of data engineering is needed. Definitely a bit of UI UX. You want to know where to place a button, what users expect, a bit of coloring and that kind of thing. And then you also need to think, I have the button up there in that size for desktop. What do I do with it on mobile? And then you have different screen sizes. So it's a lot of user experience and user interface design. APIs. APIs, the technical part of the APIs is really the simple part, let's say, but knowing when to do what and what could happen if a user clicks here and there, this is really the difficult part, because you're defining an entire software solution. And then many other skills depending on what the solution is you want to build, and also where you want to embed into. So here in our solution, we just embed in a website, let's say. But if you want to embed into an existing ERP, CRM, Very different story, because you also need to have that system interact with your report. So you need to sort of know if a user clicked a button inside your ERP CRM, because you might want to apply a filter or something similar. So yes, very different skill set from our regular data, Power BI, skills that we need. Back to licensing, because I know there's a lot of confusion around that, but I'll keep it short. No Power BI Pro license needed for viewers. If we use the app owns data scenario, not going into details, there's two different ways to do embedded. Today, I only talk about the app owns data. No Power BI Pro, only the capacity and any capacity. Even with an F2, which can be, how much is an F2? It's cheap. I think it's like 30 cents per hour or something like that. And if you pause it when it's not used, it can become very cheap. So now I want to show you a bit what this really looks like. Now I explained, we looked at slides. I want to show you what the code looks like. And one thing to really dig into if you want to learn how to embed it is the Power BI Playground, Power BI Embedded Playground. So it's a tool made by Microsoft. You can log in, and then we have this developer sandbox. So you can have a sample report, but because I'm logged in now, I can also select one of my own reports. Then I get my workspaces. There should be one called Manchester, and we should see a report called Power BI report. That's exactly the same report that we've seen before. But now it's embedded, right? So basically, this part here is now my report embedded into the playground. The nice thing about the playground is you don't need to deal with access tokens and security. This is all taken care of. Real world solution, you need to develop that as well. But this is really a good starting point if you want to learn what the code looks like. So in this case, you see we're using JavaScript. And this code was generated for us, and we can see that it doesn't look like too much code, but actually there's a lot of hidden code here. And let me just open all this, and then we'll make a few small changes. Good. So you see that, for example, we have a setting called, well, we have settings. Let's do like this. So we have settings, then we have panes, then we have filters. Filter pane is basically that thing here. And we say visible true. We might say in our solution, we want to turn off all filter panes. So when I change this to false and run the code again, now the filter pane is gone. And it's very similar to the navigation. So we have page navigation visible true, means down here we have the regular page navigation. Embedded solution, you might want to build your own navigation with your design, your colors, and so on. So probably you want to hide that. So again, in the code, I would just change this to false and run it again. And now page navigation is gone. But we still need to know the pages. So if we want to build our own navigation, how do we then do this? So what you would do is in this search here, we would type page. And then we have an API called get pages. Sounds very much like what we want to do. We need to retrieve the pages to be able to build our own navigation menu. And how it works is you basically go into the code and you just drag and drop this piece of code. This is what is then automatically added. We don't necessarily need to understand that on day one of playing around with the playground. But when I run I also don't see a change here, but as soon as I go into developer mode, you can see that now all my page names and the page IDs are printed in the console. That's a very common way of doing web development, because now the code or my tool, my app knows the page names, and now I can reuse them in a different API call. So I can build my navigation menu with all those names. And then I also need to build the navigation functionality. So I also need to say, when I click a button, go to, and let me just copy the ID of page 9. Close this. So we probably have something like report set page changes the current view to the report page you specify. Sounds very much what we want to do. Then I delete this and I just paste in that name. And now when I refresh, we should not be on this page anymore, but hopefully on a different page. And that's really generally how it works, huh? At the right API at the right time when a user clicks. But of course, it becomes more difficult when you then go into security. Who can do what? What do I do with hidden pages? What do I do again on mobile view? All these little things. That's really the difficult part of developing an embedded solution. Good. What does that look like in a real solution? Because that seems to be simple in terms of drag and drop. That's just not how it works in real life. So in real life, we have this, for example, that's just the GitHub project of our app. I think I already have my VS Code open somewhere, yes. So this here is just our VS Code project. I'm just telling you now is a good time to think about the first question, because I'm going to build a local environment, and that can take a minute or two. So anybody with a simple, easy question I can answer within a oh, this, okay. I saw you first, yes. 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 Well, not within Fabric. So if you look at the Fabric monitoring, what is it called? The Fabric capacity monitoring app, you don't see the actual person, the user that logged in. So it's always the service principal. So what we are doing, we're logging. We have a log system where we track who has logged in and how long did they stay in the portal. If you want to be able to analyze who is using it, then you need to build that on top, and then you can build anything. So you can also build which page did they access, what exactly did they do. But yeah, the Fabric admin will only show you this one technical user. We can take one more. It's done, but let's see if we still have one question until this is refreshed. I saw hands up in the back. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So good question. Yeah. So I said yes, we can. Yes, I just noticed that. Yeah. So yes, we can. Your question was pausing means we save costs. But if we automatically pause the capacity at night when all the refreshes happen, how do we deal with this? So we still need a way to be able to schedule. And that's actually what we've built in here. So, and we do have the time to do this. So I see I have 17 minutes left. So let's see. I'm logging into our Azure portal. And you can see these are our capacities. And let's just go with the Fabric one because it's cheaper. And you see currently it's not running because we're using the trial. But what I can do here is now I can say, I want to use the Fabric capacity. And I want to have this auto-managed, meaning it pauses when nobody's using it. It starts when somebody logs in. So by now it should actually be running because I changed here. So if we go back here and I refresh, now I see the pause button. So again, we've sent an API to Azure to say, hey, please spin up the capacity. But again, this is completely up to the developers how they do it. We also have an added schedule. So I can also say on Monday between 9 and 5, we also have a lot of pipelines running and whatever. Spin it up even if nobody is at work and using it. So yes, you need both to allow background operations. And now I'm just changing back to the trial, which will send another API to Azure that says, hey, we're back on the trial, stop the capacity. I'm just double checking to not waste any money. This will be paused in a second, but yes, absolutely. Okay, now it's paused again. Yes, that's what this is what I exactly showed. So this is really the functionality that, but it's again, this is custom built. So we have built that scheduling logic, and Microsoft doesn't give you this out of the box, but we just send the right API calls at the right time. So we're checking every few minutes, is somebody in the portal? If somebody is in, we don't send a request to pause. If nobody is in and it's not during a scheduled time, then we send a request to pause. So there's quite a lot of overlapping. So also during a schedule, you need to treat API calls differently. So it's a lot of programming and developing to really think of all the possible use cases that could be. So you see, in the meantime, I have the portal up and running again, but this time I have it on my local host, meaning this is really how we do the development, because you don't want to publish it to Azure every time to see your changes. So I'm now local. I can still log in with my Entra user. It should look the same, but what I want to show you is also to change a few things here. So you can see that, again, we don't have the filter pane. And it's very similar. So in the real code, I could just say filter pane true. And when I save this and go back, now I have the filter pane. So we can say true, false, or what I think is the better solution, you just don't define it, which means it's taken what's in the Power BI service. So leave it up to the developer. If they say, I want the filter pane, show it. If they say they don't want it, don't show it. But you could overrule. Or you could add a button. You could add, really. So that's, again, that's, I think, the difficult bit. Same goes for page navigation. I could say page navigation is true. Save. Go back, and now I have page navigation. Not really what we want. We want really our own navigation. And again, this could be on the right-hand side, on the top, up to you, whatever you like. But I don't really like that. I don't want it to be true, but when I go into full screen, then I want to see it. So it's another aspect of things you need to think about. What happens if users are doing that? Because what we want to do is page navigation not on by default. Filter pane, we don't define it, we take it from the service. Let me just refresh this. So now we should have filters off and navigation off. Filters off, navigation off. But when I go into full screen, then of course we still need to be able to navigate because we don't have the navigation on the left-hand side. So that's it with real code changes. You never know if those demos work. So I'm happy that everything seemed to have worked so far. I'm already getting to conclusion, and then we still have a couple of minutes for questions. I saw a couple more hands up before. So I think what's really important is for embedded, start thinking outside the box. You're not only just embedding Power BI somewhere, but you can build an entire solution. It could be a customer portal. You also need to realize that users don't need to be known to Microsoft. You could even have something public. It's your logo, it's your branding. It's not only about data analytics. I give you a few examples of use cases that we're currently dealing with and working on. So we had people that use it to embed Power BI, and they give access to their users, to their customers. So customers can look at data related to them. And one question that came up is whether they could also use it to share files with those customers. Yes, I mean, yeah, of course. It just needs to be built. But by adding file share functionality, it's a completely different use case. So maybe the analytics could be the smaller part, but they now have a secure way to share files with clients without using SharePoint. So it looks much more professional, of course, if you have your branded solution and you don't give guest access to your SharePoint and then guest access to your Power BI service. You want this to be branded. So customer loyalty, I think, is a topic, looking professional, that kind of thing. And you might be able to productize your data. So, for companies that deal with data and have data as a product, you might just sell access to a portal to your clients and turn your service business into a software business, and you're selling reoccurring subscriptions. Could also be a use case. And really that anything is possible. I know when you say that, people think, yeah, everybody always says that, but this is just a piece of code, it's software. So really, I think in this case, not completely anything, but a lot is possible. So yes, I'll be around. Come with your ideas. There's a lot of ideas and new things that we hear on a regular basis where I think, oh, that's a great idea. Why didn't we think of that? So, because every company is a bit different, so I'd be happy to hear. And now I already saw a hand up back there because now we still have 9 minutes. So you ask if end users can edit reports. But so one other use case we're working on is write back, which is sort of maybe what you think, because then you give users the possibility to add data, to add comments, to do that sort of thing. Yes, definitely. So what we can do, and I don't have a case for that I can show, but maybe just give me a second. So what we can do, and I don't have it in this example, but you all know this context menu that we get with the 3 dots on top of a visual. So we can enhance that context menu with our own functionality that again doesn't need to anything to do with Power BI. So you could say export. We're working on something that you have then an additional button here, and that will share the data used in that visual to a Slack channel. But answer is yes, it's really up to you to define. And what's also a use case that I think is quite interesting that we're also working on, I just go back to the playground and I reset code, because what we also can do, we can put a report into edit mode. So we could also have a functionality that allows certain users, or all users if we want to, I don't think it's a good idea to let everybody edit, but you could, right? To let certain users go into edit mode. And then what you need to define is what happens once they're done. Do they save and replace the existing report, or do they save as? And that's really, again, where it becomes complex to think about all the use cases, what you would want to do and who can do what and who has access, who can edit. What if somebody messes up a report? How do you go back to the previous version? That is really the tricky thing. But there's really an API for anything, let's say. Yes, please. So, show you how we specifically do it. Um, so this is the back end of our solution. Basically, we have an installer that you can just access, and then you add your name and then blah blah blah, and you log in with the global admin, and then within 30 minutes we have everything deployed that is needed. So basically, what's being deployed is an app service. That's where the app runs. That's where the code runs. An Azure SQL. We deploy a tiny one, the one that's like €4 a month or something. It's only used to store data needed by the app. What users we have, who has what access. And then we add a storage account. That's where we store logos, images, that sort of thing. The Fabric capacity we don't deploy. That's up to the end user in our case. But that's basically the 3 things that are deployed cheap. And then what we do is we push the code via DevOps pipelines to each individual instance to have the code. So no, not storing in Fabric, but really, since this is, I really think it's €4 or €5 a month, and easier to deploy. Has nothing to do with the data shown in the report. The data shown in the report stays wherever it is today. On-prem, cloud, doesn't matter. So nothing changes from data to deploying the report in a workspace. There, everything is exactly the same. We don't care where data is from. And the last thing you want to do is have access to data from a customer. So it's, yeah. Yes.
So on that page.
Yes. So yes, question is, what elements can we embed? And I have a list here, right? So we can embed reports, paginated reports, dashboards, single visuals. And I think single visuals is quite an interesting one, because you might want to have a single visual on your public facing website, for example. Or you can embed 2 visuals and even make them cross-filter each other, which can be quite nice. So yes. Please. Sorry, I know you. Yeah, next. Yes. So for write back features, back features, I think any data source that allows you to write back via an API can be used. So if you want to write back to your on-prem SQL server, if there's an API for it, embedded can do it because it doesn't have anything to do with Power BI embedded. You don't need a Power BI embedded API for it. You need an API for the place where you want to store. And so most of the popular locations that you could think of, you can use, yes. So question is, does it also work when custom visuals are used? Depends. Depends on the licensing of that specific custom visual. So if you have a custom visual, and we also develop custom visuals, so I know very well how this works. Let me just quickly go to app source. If you have a free custom visual, no problem. But if you have a paid one, very different. So for example, this is one of our visuals, and you can see that you can get it from app source. And there should be, yes, look at this. Not supported for Power BI Report Server and Power BI Embedded. So Microsoft's licensing API for custom visuals doesn't work for embedded. But most custom visual developers, us as well, we give you the possibility to just enter a license key to make it work in any environment. And I think we're perfect in time. I'm now 7 seconds over time. I think that's okay.